today we're going to talk about organization trust, right? Something that's very close to my heart, and I'm very passionate about as a practitioner. But before I go into that, just let me try to put my slide on share so that we can all see. Okay, so for a start, as intuitively desirable as organization trust is, many people might find it as very fuzzy, something that's soft. Yeah. So today, what I'm going to start off the session with is to collaborate with you to build a compelling case for organization trust. So the fact that all of you turn up despite what's happening today in COVID. And everyone's very stressed by the financial and social pressures, suggests that you place a lot of importance on this thing called organization trust. So I'm going to start by polling all of you, right, on this question, right? Why organization trust? Specifically, I would like to ask a question. If we don't invest time and effort today, when we say we, I'm talking about leaders here. I'm assuming all of us are leaders. Yeah. If we don't invest time and effort on it, the organization will experience what kind of consequence? For example, for me, if I don't invest time and effort on building organization trust, over time, I feel that, my good talents will leave the organization. So for me, it will be the loss of talent. Could you, just like all of you are very familiar now, if you have your mobile phone, can you whip it out, scan the code over here, the QR code? Or if you don't have and you're working on a computer, maybe you could just key in this particular URL code, right? And there's only this question, you see the same question on it, and just let us have the answer. We'll start the session now, and it's 30 seconds starting from now. Okay, I assume most of us have already successfully completed this question, and I'll just maybe hold on for another 5 seconds for you to just finish it off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to the website now. Okay, so I assume that everybody can see the screen here, and it shows the results of this latest poll. Yeah, so if you don't see it, maybe somebody, Jackson, if you could just highlight it to me. Yeah, otherwise I'll assume it's okay. Yeah, so the question is, if we don't invest time and effort on it, what would the organization experience, right? Yeah, and here we have a semblance of all the things that you say. We'll lose customers, there'll be disunity, disappointment, okay, loss of productivity, demotivated team, loss of valued people, lack of trust, low staff morale, lack of key candidates, people, we won't be able to recruit the right people, no teamwork, loss of morale, right? Lack of teamwork, loss of business, low morale, loss of productivity, and and that's it. Yeah. So these are the responses from 24 of you, right? Let me see. There's so there's some more. Human capital loss, right? Downtime, loss of confidence, loss of talent, hardly to play, loss of customers, mistrust, some of these things we read, loss of revenues, decline, staff turnover, cannot function properly. Wow, it seems like very serious business here, right? Yeah, and we're talking about organization trust, something that's, like I said, intuitively positive, but difficult to grasp. But here you have very, very concrete consequences if we don't do it well. So what does that all mean? So thank you for your contribution. We'll come back to this list or maybe revisit this list later on. But for now, just bear with me for another 1 minute. I'm going to switch to another screen. Eh? Okay, everybody, welcome back. I hope you can see the screen now. It shows a lot of pictures of people in my organization. Yeah, so I'm going to spend just a very quick introduction about myself and aAdvantage Consulting, where I belong to. Okay, so I'm Vincent, father of two boys, and I'd like to share my two personal values that resonates very closely to me. The first one being respect, and the second being collaboration. For me, respect means that we treat each other like how we want to be treated. Yeah, and in the context of organization trust, what that means to me is that in order for me to trust somebody, I choose to respect that person. It is very important for me to respect the person before I can extend my trust to that person. Likewise, if there's no organization trust, it's very difficult for me to respect the other person. Right. Number two, my second value is collaboration, and it stems from the belief that we don't know everything. I am not the expert in everything in all I do. There are a lot of gaps. Yeah, and in order for me to fill these gaps, I need to collaborate with people to do that. And it then means that I need to have humility and learning from other people. Again, how does that relate to organization trust? For me, again, it means that if I cannot rely on people to look after my back, or vice versa, if my colleagues, my team members cannot rely on me or anyone else in the team to look after the back, there will be no collaboration. So I thought that's something that might be useful to share from where I come from. Right. Next, I would like to share about aAdvantage. Yeah. Okay. aAdvantage was formed in year 2002. Prior to that, I worked as a management consultant for 7 years in international management consulting firm focused on strategy and transformation. In 2002, a few of our ex-colleagues came together and we created the firm aAdvantage Consulting. Since then, we are a team of 30 people. I'd like to introduce to you my two other co-owners here, and they are also active directors of the firm. You can see my pointer here, that's Han. Han is also in the panel today, and Jacqueline as well. Later on, if there are any Q&A, they would also be part and parcel of the panel to address that. Yeah. So today we are proud to have a huge family of 30 people and an extended family of associates and partners. So actually, these are some of the pictures of us having fun time together. Some of these people over here, they are our staff members, but they are also family members of our staff. We consider ourselves extended family members. And this is very important because spouses play a very important role in helping us do our work well. So together, with our colleagues and the spouses and our partners, we partner clients through organization transformation work, focused mainly on leadership, organization, culture, and execution. Here's a list of clients that we have partnered, and it's not the full list, but this is what we extend within this particular one slide. Yeah, and I just want to share with you something that I read about. Recent research by McKinsey has shown that firms generally perform 4 times better in terms of revenues and 2 times profit if they have 4 key pillars. The first key pillar, as we are all familiar with, would be a superior strategy. Second one would be enabling structure and policies. Third, people capabilities, and 4, culture. This should not be surprising to you, but what's really interesting for me is that the research particularly calls out the 4th pillar, which is culture. They call it the amplifier. So what does that mean? With the right culture, it amplifies the effects of the first 3 pillars. Right. Yeah. So you can have the best strategy, you can have a good design, structure, policies, and you have good people. With the right culture, you outperform the market. On the other hand, if you have good strategy, good design, good systems, people with capabilities, but you have a dysfunctional culture whereby there's blame, there's information hoarding, people are not united, right? The research shows that it means nothing. So you can have all these things very well designed and implemented, but it all leads to nothing. So, and the foundation of any high performing culture, which I like to put forth to you, is organization trust. Yeah. As you have already highlighted earlier, right? Without organization trust, you saw all the problems that you have actually indicated earlier. Some of which I can remember, yeah, things like, for example, low morale, demotivated teams, people don't work well together, good talents leave us. You can see the impact on implementation and eventual outcomes of organization. I would like to take this opportunity to share, because we're talking about COVID and post-COVID period, post-circuit breaker period. Yeah, I wish it's post-COVID. Yeah, what we have done as a firm within the first 2 weeks, going into the circuit breaker. Before I do share that, a flexible work arrangement has always been huge in our company. In fact, many of our team members value it as one of the key employee propositions working at aAdvantage. Many are attracted and many stay because of that as well. So it's no surprise when COVID-19 hit us in the form of circuit breaker. All of us were almost ready. I use the term almost ready for transition to move from our familiar physical world and navigate into the unknown virtual world. So we started actually 1-2 weeks working from home even before the circuit breaker. So many of us were used to that. And these were some of the things that actually I was recounting with the team, and that took place in this at the end of the second week of this circuit breaker, right? And we realized that we have done a lot of new things, right? For example, we have a practice within the firm to celebrate the birthdays of our people. And so we did our first birthday song party for our April baby online. We also did a first company-wide town hall session through virtual session. As a firm, we encourage learning from one another and learning from the environment and the society. We actually organize a lot of physical sessions whereby we go out and visit buildings and hear from different companies. One of the things that we did during this session was we actually conducted an experiential learning journey, right? And what's really interesting about this is that, apart from being able to see things virtually, we actually allowed or enabled individuals to call one another to talk about our reflections. We also took the opportunity within 2 weeks, right, to collectively and collaboratively as a team come together to build, online bite-sized products which we can offer to our clients. And also we did a lot of marketing efforts, outreach, right? In terms of the consulting work that we do, personally, I've had many leadership conversations arising out of some of what the consulting, what we call leadership values assessments that we have with the clients, where we used to have one-to-one, face-to-face sessions. In this case, we actually conducted all this online. To fun stuff like online games, planned games, Zumba, yoga that we did, and last but not least, every Friday, we made a commitment to connect with one another, just to reach out and understand how we feel about things, how are we coping, and if there are any things to celebrate. So actually, the reason why I highlight this is that, we were very surprised that we were able to very quickly, within 2 weeks, be able to come up with all this. And I don't think this is, for me, it's not a coincidence because we are all just because we're working from home. But prior to these 2 weeks that we did, one of the things that, we came together as the management team was that, whilst we can all embark on all these initiatives, one of the key things that we recognize is that as leaders, we all have our fears about where the organization is going to head given this current financial situation. So, all 7 of us came together. And during this session, we took the opportunity to talk about our fears, our vulnerabilities. We talk about our concerns about the firm, the lack of projects coming in, or the projects that we have but we are not able to implement because a lot of this involves people engagement, and we are not able to do that because our clients are not ready to get their people involved at this stage. So there are all these fears that we started talking about, and more importantly, we also talk about the fear of not being able to hold a job. And internally we made efforts to actually look at the financials. We made it very clear to people that our first priority was really to keep jobs, to hold the salaries, and the only variable that we weren't confident about was that for how long we can last. but we told them that, we could hold out, at least for the next 5, 6 months, assuming zero revenue coming in, right? Yeah, and that I think people understood. It allayed their fears, and having said all those, they were then ready to look forward and started the planning process together with us. So at the core of all this, I think at the end of what we are trying to call out of all this is that organization trust that we as a firm, we look to each other and we are there to support one another during this session. I think the same question I would like to pose to all of us, given this particular period, do we have the trust in our organization that our people will choose to do the right things and do things right for the organization? At aAdvantage, our current culture of people taking ownership, seeking clarity, respecting differences, learning and applying new knowledge, and caring for one another helps us navigate through this difficult period and propels us for the future. So in a way, we see ourselves as one, learning and adapting together. So thanks for hearing my little sharing about my firm. Right now, I would like to take this opportunity to, bring us to, other examples of clients that we have worked with, whereby organization trust is not something that they just hold tightly on, but, they see that impacting their business results. And before I go into that, I would like to share with you what I have here. I call a tale of two organizations. And over here, you see company A and company B. Company A and company B, these are real organizations, right? And they operate in the local market. They have exactly the same industry, same staff size. Yeah, but when so what we did was with company A and company B was that, we invited their people, their staff to give their perspective on the way we work within the organization. Yeah, so basically they are asked to rank from a list of words, choose from a list of words, 10 words that best describes the way they work as an organization. And this is what comes out for organization A. In organization A, the leaders collaborate and enable their teams. People are not afraid to experiment and challenge status quo. They are agile and bold. Everyone holds each other accountable to organization-wide outcomes. There is trust in the organization. In organization B, you see a slightly, actually a very different picture. There is organization blame. People start to blame each other when things go wrong. There is information hoarding. People are not proactive in sharing information. In fact, they think that information is king. So a lot of them are very reluctant to share information. There's conflict avoidance, silo mentality, and people are in the organization very genuinely concerned about their own self-interest, right? So my question to all of you is that between the two companies A and B, which company would you likely be trust to navigate the unknowns and be future ready? I guess the question is very, the answer is very direct, right? It's company A. But as a senior leader, how prepared are you in investing in organization trust? We talked about that earlier on, right? All the impacts of not doing that. But as a senior leader in your organization, how ready are you to invest in organization trust? Just to end this off, a clearly defined organization strategy alone is insufficient. The gap between what we know as a good strategy and excellent results is top-notch execution. A high-performing culture with a foundation established on trust determines how well and far we execute. All right, so this is actually the question that I wanted to ask earlier. Which organization would you trust to drive business transformation? When there's a lack of organization trust, there's something what we call there's no psychological safety. And what are some of the symptoms? How do we know that there's no psychological safety in an organization? So here I actually share some of these things that I've observed working with clients, right? People start to, when there's no psychological safety, people start to avoid taking risks because they feel that, if things go wrong, they will be blamed. So in this case, they rather not, try new things. This is something that you might have heard. So I'm going to share something in Chinese. It says, 多做,多做,不做,不做. So, I've actually worked with client organizations whereby, when I talk to some of their people, through focus groups and things like that, when there are questions as to why are we not trying all these new things and all this stuff, a lot of people actually started saying, sharing that, this phrase, 多做,多做,不做,不做. That means the more you do, the more mistakes you get, right? And therefore, the safest thing to do is not to do it. Yeah. And the question is, why do they adopt this belief? And we know that this belief is very dangerous. Yeah. Next, when there's no psychological trust, right, or safety, people only focus on things that they know. Why? Because these are things that they are certain. These are the domain areas that they are competent in. And therefore the risk of them failing is lower. They don't hold other accountables. Number three, even when it's the right thing to do. Yeah. And why is that so? Because maybe they feel that it's not safe to have conflicts. And if I bring up conflicts or difficult conversations, people may take it against me, and in the future, it will be tough to work with one another. When there's no psychological safety, people start to potentially, some of them blame one another when things go wrong. They might even hoard information. And some may say yes, but mean no, right? Yeah, so how often do you have situations whereby people come together for meetings and they say that, yes, we are in this, but eventually when things are not done, it's only because they have not done it. So say yes, but mean no. And they don't go out of way, when there's no psychological safety, they don't go out of way to make things happen. Whenever they encounter problems, they will just be stuck there, because they don't want to push the envelope, right? And as far as possible, sweep it under the carpet. And last but not least, they look to someone else to lead and make the decision. I mean, as a business owner and a boss, I think many of you here, whether you're leaders at every level, how many times do you wish that your people can actually take the lead, right? So these are just some of the symptoms that you may see when there's no psychological safety. But what's the impact? And that's where earlier on you have already alluded to some of these things. So let me just share this with you here. When there are such limiting behaviors that you see on the left here, what you potentially end up experiencing in the organization in terms of suboptimal outcomes would be that you actually see a lot of silo mentality. That people are very focused in chasing their own KPIs, but at the end of the day, organization outcomes may not be met. You might experience no innovation or lesser innovation, status quo in the organization. Yeah. There might be more internal competition and more from a limiting perspective. Yeah, right. There's lower growth in the organization or no growth. There's weak financial performance. There's higher employee turnover, loss of talents. Morale is low. We talk about that. And also in action paralysis. Yeah, in times of this, where we are in crisis mode, where there's no action, we are paralyzed by all this, how would that what would that result for outcomes of the organization? So I'd like to share this quote by this organization, Kindred Healthcare, and the CEO, Ben Breyer, said, "Neither I nor the board will hold it against them if they take responsible risk." So the key is responsible risk and fail, right? Actually, we are more upset by inaction and paralysis. Yeah. So at this stage, I would just like to invite all of us to maybe just take the 10 seconds to reflect on to what extent do you see some of these behaviors being exhibited within your organization? Yeah. How does it impact the organization? Can you relate to some of these outcomes that I've actually highlighted over here? Next, I'd like to share with you a quote, and this Chinese quote here, which I, when I spent time in China, living there and working there, I came across this, somebody shared this with me, and it says, 修身, 齐家, 治国, 平天下. Many of you might be familiar with this, right? Literally translated is over here, improve upon yourself first, then manage your family, then govern your state. And that is the only way to bring justice and virtue to the world. The context of this is, This was said by Confucius during the feuding world. Yeah. And at that point in time, the point is this: if you want to conquer the world, but of course, today when we put it in the context of the work that we do, when we say conquer the world or be with the world, it could be that we want to bring better outcomes for our society, for the environment, or it could be just for your community or for your organization and the stakeholders. And being better also means maybe for your team and also for your individual. But what it does say is that in order for us to achieve big things, those end outcomes that we talked about earlier, right? Yeah, it should start with Susan, which is really about leading oneself. And if I can draw an analogy to this phrase, right? Yeah, that the organization is alive and constantly learning and growing, then we first need to lead ourselves as individuals and leadership teams. And at this stage here, it's not just about skills and knowledge. Skills and knowledge are important, but at the end of the day, it's also about the motivations that we hold and why we do what we do. Yeah. So many times, individually, we might not be very conscious about why we do what we do. We always end up doing a lot of things. Yeah. But the other point to note is that in organizations, we typically work as leadership teams, and all of us have different motivations. And if our motivations are not aligned for the organization, how do we then expect ourselves to rule our how do we expect ourselves to engage the rest of the organization, to lead the rest of the organization, our stakeholders, and the rest of the community and the world, right? So that is, I like to just share this as the context of my next sharing. Okay. So this is where I go into the case sharing, right? And this is an organization that I work with, right? And I was contracted this time by the chairman of the board. And the chairman of the board one day spoke to me about this. She came up and she says, Vincent, the management team came up to me recently and asked for a restructuring of the organization. You know what I said to him? I said that, over my dead body, would I allow you to restructure the organization until you get your management acts right? Yeah. So what happened in the organization is this. Yeah, what's observed amongst the senior management team is that the senior management leaders are not walking into each other's door to discuss issues, right? They communicate typically through their deputies. Management meetings are often seen to be tense and lack openness, right? Either it's very fiery between two individuals or three, or most people just keep quiet because I think they wanted to avoid conflicts, right? There's also a perception amongst the leadership team that only certain of the leaders make the call. People are quick to assign blame when things go wrong. Yeah. Many of their staff feel disengaged and they end up feeling that they are just doers, right? Yeah. And whenever feedback is sought from them, nothing gets back to them. They felt that the decisions have not incorporated their feedback, right? Some leaders are seen to be extremely goal-focused, yeah, and transactional, while others lean to the other extreme side, that they're very people, yeah. And obviously both are important. We want goal-focused people, and we also want people-oriented. But in this organization, you have leaders who are very extreme, yeah, and they tear at each other. Last but not least, relationships are strained and they work against collaboration and open communication. In short, organization trust or trust within the leadership team has broken down, right? So what happened? So what did we do? One of the things that we actually started doing was that, have these one-to-one conversations with each of these leaders, resulting in bringing all of them together to talk about this. I recall that we were supposed to gather all 7 of them together for a one-day dialogue. Followed by another session with the level after that, right? The next level. The session was supposed to be from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. for that day. Yeah, just to talk about, how the leadership team is doing, what would it take for us to move forward, because they recognize that, things are not working well. Yeah, but, prior to this session, when I spoke to some of them on a one-to-one basis, some of them actually came up to me and said that, Vincent, I know what you're trying to do, but trust me, it won't work. We've done this before. Yeah. But nonetheless, we went through this, and what happened was that on the day itself, we spoke about our vulnerabilities, right? Yeah, so each of them spoke about, how things have not worked, for them and how they felt about it, and how they were concerned about how some of these things, will impact the outcome of the organizations going forward. And, it was supposed to be 9 to 6 p.m. That day, they spoke from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. This was a big breakthrough for the team because, prior to that, if you remember from my sharing, they don't even walk to each other's door. The staff told us that, when they go for meetings, it's like going for war. It's an internal war. So when they spoke from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., it was an amazing feat for themselves, And guess what, thereafter at 9 p.m., they says, Vincent, we have not spoken enough. Can we have the next day just for ourselves again? We will postpone the session with our next level people to another date soon. Yeah, but we need to continue the conversation. And that was what happened, right? So they spoke for the second day straight, yeah. And in the second day, you can find that the tension was visibly reduced. They spoke about, how they can actually then move forward as a team and what's expected of each of them. And they committed that, beyond these 2 days, they wanted to come together once a month to check in on one another, right? Last but not least, they committed to a process of feedback, right? Yeah, they recognize that it's not enough for them to just, as a team, just say that, yes, we are in and we'll do this. They recognize that each of them potentially plays a part in what they currently see as a dysfunctional culture. So what they did was that they offered themselves and said that, okay, let's do a 360 feedback on ourselves, getting feedback from the peers, from the people above us, which is actually the CEO and the board members, and then also the rest of the staff. Okay. Prior to this, so this is what we brought into the session to facilitate the dialogue, amongst the 7 leaders. You realize that this is a picture over here of how the 7 leaders view the way they work as a leadership team. Yeah, we gave them a list of 80, 90 words, right? And they chose from, and this 80, 90 words, 80% of these words were positive words, like, for example, collaboration, clarity, vision, mission, right? Yeah. But they chose words, when they were asked to choose words that that reflect the way they work as a leadership team, they chose mostly these other words: silo mentality, conflict avoidance, blame, and all this stuff. So this kind of reinforces that, that the team was dysfunctional at that point in time. Yeah. But the point that I'm trying to bring over here is that, we can't bring leadership team in without data. Sometimes, if you don't bring in some of this data, you don't have a starting point. Yeah. So, but in this case, what we did was we bring in data to allow them to talk about this. But the session was not a session of blame or problem solving. Yeah. Okay. One thing that I want to highlight is that through the survey, there's this particular measure we call entropy. Entropy measures the level of dysfunction in an organization, or in this case, the level of dysfunction in the management team. The higher the percentage, the less positive it is. So the worse it is. So where does 57% sit? Well, if you look into this chart here, they actually range all the way down here. It says more than 50%. If you read it, it says cultural crisis. For private sector or corporations, high risk of bankruptcy, takeover, or in their case, implosion, right? So when they saw these results, they were not surprised, but it gave them a common call to act. So back to the 360 feedback that we did for them after the session, right? So each of them actually had their own profile, right? So how the 360-degree feedback works is that, we do not measure basically competencies or knowledge. What it serves to measure is the candidate's own perspective of how he or she leads, or what are the motivations for leading. And also then for the people who actually rated that person, how they experience his or her leadership. So, we actually have what we call how, let's say using this case, how Maria sees herself and how do others see Maria. So this is just an example, but let me very quickly bring you to the profile for 3 of the 7 leaders here, right, which I've just chosen to share. So these are 3 candidates here: candidate A, candidate B, and C. These are the observed values. Basically, these are what their staff, their peers, and their supervisors see of them, right? I'm going to focus on just one, and that would be for the person A, right? I've spoken to this person before, and he has been with the organization for the last 20, 25 years. Very competent, knows the industry inside out, has a lot of networks with external parties, yeah, results oriented. And this person sees himself as very results oriented, achievement oriented. At the same time, he sees himself as a coach, mentor, and he aspires to make a difference. But the picture that comes back to him from the people who work with him is this. So you can see that, in this case, he comes across as somebody who's directive, yeah, and and people feels that he brings to them, I know it all style, right? Yeah, so just listen to me, and you can't be wrong. This person cannot be wrong because he's so quality conscious and cautious in all he does. So this is their experience with him. His staff ends up as doers, whilst he actually thinks that he's actually mentoring and coaching them, right? He demands more of them because of uncertainty. They often end up working long hours, and he's often seen as controlling and authoritative. So here you have a situation whereby a leader, very passionate, and tells me that, Vincent, I really think that, for us to move forward as an organization, we need to coach and mentor our people. Yeah, but I recall a conversation I had with one of his subordinates. Right, the subordinate shared with me and said that, hey, Vincent, whenever I go to him for advice, right? Yeah, you know what happened? And all I wanted was the decision because, we were rushing for things. He would spend the next 3 hours convincing me why his decision is correct and why whatever we put up is not right. For me, so the staff continued to get on this. For me, it's not so important that, I get things that I don't, that my his decision is different from me. All I wanted was just a decision, but he would spend so much time talking about this. So from that perspective, whatever coaching or mentoring impact that, this leader wanted to have was lost in this process. All the staff felt was that he wanted me to buy into his response. I don't need that. If you look at the leader's profile, the entropy level, the level of dysfunction in each of this leader is at these percentages. And for this purpose, for the purpose of leadership assessment, we have a slightly different scale, and you realize that most of the leaders actually fall way beyond the bottom rung again. And again, many of them have critical issues in terms of the way they lead. So it is no surprise that when it comes to the culture of the organization, at that point in time, it was truly dysfunctional. Right? I am going to rush a bit because I recognize that we are rushing a bit for time now. Yeah. So what we did towards the end was that, we recognized that in doing all this, it has to start with rebuilding trust in the organization. But what was interesting was this, right? Yeah. We know that trust building is not something easy and can be achieved within a day, right? Neither is culture building. But what they have observed within two months after the session, and we actually interviewed some of their people reporting to this leadership team, they recognize that the atmosphere during management meetings is now a lot more open and professional. People are genuinely interested to listen more and more objective. And for this staff, they also find that it's more encouraging to see management trying to support and elevate each other. It is now more visible that attempts to reach out by the leadership team, and they are communicating more. The leaders are more positive, less emotional, and more restrained. They are no longer shouting matches. There's less talk on the ground of infighting, relationships, and so on and so forth. And you realize that, while culture building takes time, trust building takes time, you can actually see wins very quickly within 1-2 months. Yeah. The truth is that, for this organization, we continue to work with them. And after 1.5 years, right, yeah, the entropy of the leadership team went from 57% to 25%. It was at this stage whereby the chairman, so I'm going to bring back to the chairman, remember, he was very reluctant to allow the organization to restructure. At this point in time, he finally allowed them to restructure because he felt that the team is now ready to restructure the organization. Okay, I'm going to move to the third part of the my presentation now, which is actually about, so now in the context of, we talk about organization trust, we have a case for organization trust now. What does that mean for us moving into the future, right? And I'm going to skip this. I'm going to move to the next one. Yeah. Recently, yeah, as we are part of this Barrett Value Center, right, which is actually a think tank for organization culture work, yeah, that we belong to. And recently they came out with this, what they call a global COVID survey, right? Yeah. And it was kind of a pulse check. It was conducted in April, sometime the last 2 weeks of April into early May, and the results were shared recently, right? In this research, what they wanted to do was to identify how has the pandemic impacted the values and culture of the organizations, what are the emerging priorities of the businesses and employees, and what is needed in order to recover and thrive. I'm going to share with you the top level insights, right? So this slide shows people's response, and these are working professionals' response, working people's response to how they view their organization pre-COVID. So this is like 1 year before COVID, and how they view the culture, as in the shifts in the culture during the COVID period. And you realize that over here, during the pre-COVID culture, there's a lot of dots, right? Yeah, that are focused on particular levels. So in this case, it's level 1 and level 3. So what this particular this shape here recommends, suggests to us is that prior to COVID days, and that's one year before that, right? Yeah. The economy wasn't doing particularly well as well. So there's a lot of attention in organizations, right? Focus on building viability, survivability, and business performance. But what has happened because as a result of COVID, and this was obviously during this survey was conducted during this COVID period recently, they recognize that a lot of staff are now saying that when they're asked to describe the way they work in the organization, that a lot of attention now is moved from levels 1 to 3 to what they call level 4, which is actually evolution. In layman's terms, it's about change, transformation. So they recognize that the organizations that they belong to is now focusing a lot of enabling changes in the organization. Of course, things like survivability, viability remains important, but this is a very significant shift, where from survivability, from just being excellent, yeah, to enabling change in organizations. These are the words that are chosen by the participants, and all 1,400 of them, I remember, yeah, to describe, the best describes the culture that they see pre-COVID and during COVID. And the blue words are all the new words that describes the culture during this period. The key themes are this, right? Yeah. There are some shifts from pre-COVID to during COVID. What are these shifts? Yeah. So, the shifts in organizations can be kind of summarized in the following three. Being the best to adapting and leading change, from aligning self to organization to being more people focused. That doesn't mean that it's one or the other, but I think it's the message is increasing priority as people start to work from home. They're calling out for more attention on themselves, right? Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think for us to be able to sustain the journey, we need to look after ourselves first, right? And from what we call potentially limiting practices of what they observe pre-COVID bureaucracy, control, cost reduction, they are saying that today that people are experiencing more of teamwork, collaboration, and information sharing. So these are all positive shifts. And things like this normally don't happen immediately. But so normally when based on experience, what might usually take people 5 to 6 years to experience these shifts is now experienced within months, right? Question is, of course, will this shift be sustainable? One more insight that came out from the survey was this, right? Yeah. So this is the snapshot of what people's experience with the culture is during COVID. And then the other question that was posed to them was that, what do you expect of the organization, or what do you desire of the organization post-COVID? So which is really about the new normal, right? Yeah, a lot of people are talking about the new normal. So the question is, so what kind of workplace environment do we desire in order for us to navigate through the new normal? What you observe here are the blue words, and again, I think this is a very positive thing. Number one, what people desire of is actually an evolution. What people desire of post-COVID is also evolution. And in terms of the words, 6 out of the 10 words that are shown here are similar. And according to this model here, it's a very strong match. It means that people are comfortable with the way we work now during this COVID, and they want this to be carried forward, moving forward into the new normal. So are we really on the right track? So these are the 6 values that were highlighted by the blue words: adaptability. People are calling for more adaptability, agility, teamwork, cross-group collaboration, digital connectivity, and balance. Brings me back to our question. So how does organization trust come in relevant to this? So if these are the things that people are calling out for going forward, going into the future, my question that I'd like to pose to all of us is that, can we have adaptability and agility if there's a lack of organization trust? If we don't trust that people will look after our backs when we fail, instead there will be blame in the organization. Do you expect people to be adaptable, agile? Do you expect teamwork and collaboration to happen if there's no trust? Yeah. So that's the question I would like to pose, and maybe for our own reflection here, right? So here's a tongue-in-cheek. Even if you are on the right track, so so this is what people are calling out for. You will get run over if you just sit there. Right? So if we are happy that people are calling out for all this, and we think that this will happen, and we start to we don't do anything about it, right? Yeah, I think we might end up being run over. Finally, some thoughts on where to begin, right? Yeah. So I'd like to start off with this, which is actually from my sharing from the case study, right? Some leaders view vulnerability as a weakness, right? To me, that's too bad, right? Long gone are the days when leaders can pretend to be expert in all areas. A crisis will quickly expose a leader's weakness and blind spots. If we pretend to have all the answers and we refuse to acknowledge this, others who work with us will also do the same thing. And it will be a case of blind leading the blind, right? Yeah, so, for me, a good place to start off would be to get your leadership team together. Talk about not hard things like strategies and systems and all that, but really just to check in with one another, how we feel about where we are today. What does it take for us to go into future? What are some of our vulnerabilities as a leadership team? With that, then we can proceed to our next step, right? Yeah, which is really engaging the rest of the organization. And the same process can take place, engaging the staff, talk about vulnerabilities, bring them from vulnerabilities to aspirations. How can we bridge the gaps, have conversations going through that. The same process goes with our customers, as stakeholders, obviously we talk about, how can we, during this period, work with you to enhance our experience for you, right? Yeah. With all the insights that are gathered, 1, 2, 3, we can then go into repositioning ourselves for the future. That's where we refine, we realign our strategies, our process, and get ourselves digitally connected moving forward. So that would be my top 9 recommendations going forward. And with this, I would like to make it basically just invite you. This set of slides will be given to you, right? So all of you would be able to click on some of this later on over here for the details. Last but not least, if you belong to an organization and you feel that the organization has already an asset in the organization trust, right? I think aAdvantage has been partners of influential brands, and there's this recognition that we feel that it's not just about an award. The fact that if you apply for this and you eventually be recognized as this, the outcomes are this. We feel that you be able to attract the right people because people want to work in organizations or work with leaders that they can trust. Number 2, working with customers. Customers obviously see value in this because at the end of the day, if there's organization trust, it means excellence in the organization, not now, but also moving into the future. So if you're interested, you can actually click on this as well. And finally, I'd just like to invite you to connect with me, and here's my LinkedIn profile. And if you'd like to hear what some of our clients have said, I will also include this in a slide pack. And I would like to end with these last 2 slides. From our experience, most organizations need it, and in this case, it's organization trust, but most avoid it and struggle to achieve sustainable results. This is your opportunity, and there are 2 paths ahead, right? Yeah. On the left-hand side, we have a path whereby we are agile, collaborative. You get to achieve your vision. There's lasting foundation. On the other hand, we struggle and invest in solving problems, we experience mediocre results. Which path will you choose? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
There's some question related. I mean, just now, Vincent, you mentioned about a lot about the company culture, the leadership value. So we have some question like this participant asked, how does company culture impact on the trust and loyalty internally? And one company even asked that, saying that the company had facing high turnover rate before COVID, and the morale is very low during this period. So how should I do to gain the trust and loyalty of my employees? So, like, I mean, previously before COVID, the company culture and that is always relatable, and I mean directly linked to the turnover rate and retention of the employee. So after COVID, what changes? And I mean, in terms of company culture, what is important, and what is your advice and comments for the bosses out there in terms of trust and loyalty internally for their employees?
Yeah, I think thanks for bringing that up. I actually hear a few questions within that, but maybe just to end up with that, you know, as we navigate, we talk, part of this is obviously, everyone's talking about the new normal. And, you know, yeah, earlier the global survey suggests that, you know, in the new normal, our employees are calling for some of these values, right? Yeah, whether it's digital connectivity, adaptability, and agility. And no one is going to disagree that these are important. Yeah, how can we navigate unknowns if we're not agile, right? How can we navigate unknown if we're not adaptable, right? Of course, digital comes very much into our lives. Yeah, but the question is this, right? Yeah, so the fact that people are calling out for this does not mean that, you know, yeah, these things will happen. Yeah, some organizations will embrace this very quickly because their existing culture is already that, right? Yeah, there's already a lot of trust in the organization, to the extent whereby people are very clear, you know, yeah, that, you know, yeah, decisions are not only made by the leaders at the highest level, right? At every level, everybody is empowered to do that. But on the other hand, if I may say, empowerment does not come without responsibility. When we talk about adaptability, agility, right? Yeah, one of the key assumptions is that, yeah, we must allow people to fail, right? Yeah, and this is a mantra that everybody talks about. Yeah, but you know, yeah, let me put up another question. What if people fail because of lack of effort, lack of discipline? Yeah, so they say that they will do it, but they don't do it, or they do it, but they give you a 6:30 job. Then the next question is that, you know, would leaders be, and also the staff in the organization, would we be willing to hold each other accountable for that, right? And when we say hold each other accountable for that, we don't mean blame. Yeah, it's about, you know, yeah, hey, I realize that we talk about these things, but you know, yeah, you have not done it, or you have come out with these things, but you know, yeah, clearly I believe that you can actually do a better job on this, right? Yeah. So are people comfortable with such conversations? So especially starting with the leadership level, right? Yeah. And if within the leadership team, there are already some of these problems, which I highlighted in my case study or case sharing earlier, then it should start off at that level. So for me, if you ask me for recommendation going forward, I think, you know, yeah, let's start off with understanding if trust is really broken in the organization, right? And how do you know that? You know, you can talk to people, you can do surveys, all this stuff. If the answer is yes, then, you know, as a leadership team, we have to ask ourselves, how do we contribute to that, if at all? Because when there's lack of organization trust, the first thing that we ask will be, okay, who do we look to? Right? Yeah, it's likely or not, you know, whether you believe it or not, yeah, it's going to start off at that level, right? So at that level, are we prepared to expose our own vulnerabilities? Yeah. So again, you know, my last slide starts off with starting with the leadership team, engage your people, you know, assure them this is what we want to do going forward. Make sure that, you know, we actually leave out whatever we promise, of course, you know, yeah. And then, you know, have our systems to reinforce some of these positive behaviors. So it's a very long answer to the question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, so one note for you guys that because we start to seeing some, I mean, more questions coming in. So let's maybe we extend the webinars a little bit to 12:30, so we have more time to answer the question. So, hope that, I mean, we have our lunch a little bit later, so we try to answer some of the questions. Like Vincent, just now you mentioned that they all start from the leadership. So it's very interesting that one participant asked. I mean, I quoted his question is that I realized my managers across the department are kicking the balls, you know, like playing Tai Chi to each other. And there's no harmony or cohesive among them, although they look friendly at the surface. What should I do? So it's like this trust issue is happening at the leadership level. So yeah, what can they do? Yes.
So that is not an easy situation, obviously, yeah. So yeah, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that, yeah, you have leaders who are, not, are interacting in a way such that, yeah, organization trust is being compromised, right? So what can you do as an individual? Um, for me, I think my belief is always number one. Okay, so this is just my personal belief. Number one, if I've got a relationship with that leader, right, or the leaders, I will start to share how I feel and how does that impact me and the team and the way we work. That's number two. Number two, I would encourage, and it's not easy, but it's actually, you remember I said about Susan, right? Leading ourselves first. And for me, it's about, recognizing that just because some leaders are not playing that role well, right? It doesn't mean that, we can't do what is right. So you as an individual must also then, live out those values that you believe in. And hopefully if everybody believes in that, there is a tipping point, the leaders will also be pressured because this is what people are asking for, right? And leaders, if they don't act on it, they will either ship out after some time. So that's my short answer to that. Yeah, but it's not easy. Yeah, I can't go around and tell my leaders to move. And you better get your acts right. Yeah, unless you're the chairman of the board. Yeah, which I just said. Yeah.
Understand. So it's all start from the building your own self and try to influence your people around surrounding you. So also is lead to another question, because I think Joyce asked, getting the senior leadership to talk in positive way is not easy. So maybe from the leadership perspective, so how is it better to be facilitated or what? This is her question.
Yeah, so it's going to be very difficult if you don't have, as an existing leadership team, you don't have a practice of coming together and connect with one another and talk about vulnerabilities. All the time you always talk about is about plans, structure, problems with projects, problems with business and all that stuff, right? Yeah. So that's actually part and parcel of the line of work that I do in as well. I do a lot of facilitation work for leadership teams, right? Yeah, and sometimes it's not easy, especially when the person who's supposed to facilitate it internally is a contributor to the problem itself, right? So many times it could be the CEO, the COO, and whatever, right? Or even any of the senior leaders within the team. So there is value in getting a third party in, right? And the third party must also then be able to very quickly, I guess, understand the individuals within the organization, bring in data to be able to facilitate the conversations well. So that was what we did for that client organization that we shared. But I've done this for many, many organizations and in their journey of building culture and trust within the organization.
Okay, thank you, Vincent. So I think maybe we move on to last few questions. So there's a participant say, thanks for the sharing, Vincent. Question, what is the estimated time to run a transformation project, like for leadership, culture, and execution? And would there be any government grant available?
Yeah, so typically, if you talk about culture change, it's not a 1 month, 2 months, 2 days thing. Yeah, so a lot of it is about, based on our experience, it's about 1.5 years. Some of the clients we work with are already in our 8th year working with them, right? So it's culture is a living thing. It will continue to go, but we hope that through our work, we are able to enable them. So some of the organizations have taken it on themselves, right? But having said that, as I shared in my case, it doesn't mean that you have to wait for 1.5 years, 2 years before you see any results. Yeah, some of these things are observed, especially when you start to do pulse checks, and pulse checks are important because then it gives you a snapshot of where we are, how we can continue to build on these things. And when people see positive results, they start to hopefully also start to do more of these things, and more people will be involved, right? And there will, at some stage, there'll be a tipping point, in my view. In terms of grants, yeah, there are grants in the, especially if you're SME, right? Yeah, so there are grants offered by enterprise development, under enterprise development grants by Enterprise Singapore, right? Yeah, so we have worked with clients, yeah, in doing culture work within the auspice of better service experience or business transformation or human capital transformation.
Okay, so for, all the participants attend this, so make sure you fill out the survey later. We'll send you the slides. If any, all this kind of solution thing and consultation, you want to seek any advice from aAdvantage, from Vincent, feel free to fill out the feedback, and we'll send you the slides. Then you may have the contact details of all the relevant, to serve your need. Okay, so maybe last two questions. Okay, very interesting. Got one participant asked a very, $1 million question. Like
Okay.
money, because firms are, this is what he said, firms are struggling to survive with downsizing and cash burns. How do we build culture with hard and harsh truth of corporate profitability and viability staring at us? Also, another participant asked, like, is total transparency of the management good for building trust internally? How do we wait on the information that we are going to share and not to share? So basically what they both of them are asking that, because downsizing, cash burn, all these very hard and harsh truth of the corporate. So in terms of building trust, what is the level of transparency? What kind of, I mean, should I structure our information to disseminate to our employees and the whole organization in terms of building trust and loyalty?
Yeah, yeah. So maybe again, I see it as two questions, right? The first question is, given the current situation whereby financials are so tight and all this stuff, yeah, do we have that kind of, should we spend time and all this on culture building, right? Yeah. So for me, I would like to turn that question around and says that, hey, what if you don't invest in it? Yeah. So for me, for our organization, I come to you as not just a consultant or a business advisor, but we also run a business, right? Yeah. And our business, like most other businesses, have been impacted financially. So for the last 2-3 months, I think our revenues have also dropped 80%, right? Yeah. The fact is that we have our projects, but we can't start some of these projects. Some of these projects are slowed down, right? Yeah. So if we are today, if the COVID situation is totally released and we can actually go out, we'll be very busy. But the question is this: like it or not, our staff are now wondering, yeah. So how are we going to survive this? They have their own concerns about financials. They have their own families. They have their own children to feed and things like that. So do you have a choice of not addressing this? One might not see culture as something that's has to be very big, but it has to start somewhere. It has to start with being honest about where we are, right? And then this brings me to the second part about how transparent do you want to be? This is something that I cannot advise, but I think it boils back down to leaders. What are our beliefs about transparency? When we've started this firm, right, there are some of these examples. For example, when we put up proposals to clients and all this stuff, right, the fees that we put up, and everything is transparent to our people in the organization. Why? Because we believe that, they know and they want to learn. They want to know how we price certain projects. Yeah. They want to know why we price it that way. Yeah. I've got people from other consulting firms who join us and they say that, hey, Vincent, I've never, when we put up proposals, we never get to see the fees that we put up. Yeah. Because, it's confidential. Yeah. So it's back to your beliefs about people. If we choose to run our business to say that, hey, if we go through the process and we have a very rigorous process of 4 rounds of interviews, right? If we go through that effort to bring in people, yeah, and then eventually choose not to trust them, something is not right. Yeah. Obviously, there are certain information that we don't share openly. For example, if we are signed to some Official Secrets Act for some government projects, right, and it's only for that project team, we'll keep it strictly within that. Yeah, for those reasons, and we explain to people why certain information cannot be shared. Right. So for me, moving forward, if you want to have agility, you want people to, transparency and all these things is very important. So I'm coming from that angle. So hopefully
Okay.
I answers both the questions.
So basically, I think what Vincent say is very good is that in Chinese you always say 用人无疑疑人用. You use, you are engaging, you are empowering the person that you must be trusting them. So if there's no trust, you have no point to go through so many interview levels and procedure to hire them. So I think,
if I may just add on to that, so my call is not that for us to just trust everybody blindly, right? Yeah. But you have to choose to trust people first, right? Yeah. And if you choose to trust people and over time people show that they cannot be trustworthy, then you need to hold them accountable, right? Yeah. You cannot be, I want to trust that, and then the employees keep asking, hey, trust me, and they trust me, but eventually they don't deliver. They don't not because of lack of capabilities. They don't deliver because they think that maybe it's not important. There are other things more important for them, for example. Or they only give a 6:30 job, then we need to then hold people accountable for that. Yeah.
I think trust, like what you say, is two ways.
Both ways.
Both ways, right? So, okay. So, maybe last question is quite interesting. The last question here is that one participant asked, how do we build trust in terms of brand image? Because we were discussing internally for the trust, organization trust. So, but one person asked, maybe it's a bit he said, how do we make our brand become trustworthy among the market and the customers? I think especially after this COVID-19, after the circuit breaker, how do we build trust in terms of, to help on the brand image, to serve the customer, to let the market trust on the company itself?
So you a brand image, right? Yeah. So it's a brand image. Yeah. So I think I kind of addressed that during my last few slides. Yeah, if I got the 6 areas I mentioned, starting with the leadership staff. And yeah, there's one component which is, don't wait until after the COVID and then you start to engage your clients, even though they're not buying anything from you right now. So for us at aAdvantage, we are already, constantly reaching out to our clients, sharing with them whatever new information, new insights that we have. Sometimes it's just a matter of checking in. Like yesterday, I just called up my Malaysian client, just to check in how things are. And they were very happy to share what they have done during this period with us. So it's not about me just learning from them, but I also, they learning from me, but I also get to learn what are some of the new things that they're doing. Yeah. So with that, I think it enables the customers to feel that you still care for them, not just for financial purpose, right? Yeah. That you are partners, you're with them. And obviously, the other part about building brand is, I think the last part, obviously, if you do have some of these brand recognitions, yeah, and obviously we don't go for recognition just for the sake of these things. If, let's say, the organization trust results in you under influential brand, just like I mentioned, right? Yeah, and you're recognized for that. To me, it's a hallmark of success. It tells me that, today you invest in this building culture, organization trust, and with that, it impacts implementation. It impacts the way you interact with customers, the way you interact internally within yourselves, and you are agile and all that. So I think from a brand image perspective, culture obviously plays a very important part.
I think it's for trust to be built, we need to start somewhere. At least start by talking to each other internally and externally. We need to start somewhere. So I think to get in touch with to each other will be the best. Maybe the first very costless, not much cost, but I think it's a good step to take. So okay, so I think we're coming to the end of the session. Maybe Vincent, you have any? Can you give us maybe a very short, last conclusion or maybe last advice and comment for all the business bosses, businessmen and women out there to how they, in terms of organization trust, we are looking beyond the circuit breaker and COVID-19. What is the maybe short advice and final advice you can give to them?
Yeah, for me, again, it starts with Susan, right? Yeah, recognizing, it's not because everybody says organization trust is important, we are doing this. You have to ask yourself the first question as leaders, yeah. Why is this important? And in a way, I actually facilitated that in the first question, right? Yeah. So what if we don't invest in this? If you can go beyond that question and come back and you make a conclusion, actually, nothing's going to change, right? If I don't invest in this, then my advice is, don't bother about doing any of all these things, right? Yeah. But if you say that, hey, if I don't invest in these things, I see all these negative consequences, then I have to ask myself, to what extent do I contribute to that, right? And then because in your organization, you're probably not the only leader, you are leaders, you're amongst leaders. How do you get everybody to recognize the importance of this? And we all play a role in here. So I think the conversation must start at that level. And if you happen to be not at that level and you're middle manager or whatever, right? Yeah. My not recommendation, but my encouragement is that, we all choose to believe what we want, right? Yeah. So, I encourage that we choose to do the right things. And if the right thing is this, and, even if my leaders don't do all these things, choose to do the right things. And over time, people recognize you for who you are.